Welcome back to Three Things with JR. I'm your host, JR, and it is Valentine's Day. I am recording this Monday night, February 14th, Valentine's Day. I am all alone at home talking to you on Valentine's Day. My girlfriend Kiki is busy in Waynesboro singing in a choir rehearsal, which is exactly what she's been wanting to do for the last 2 years, and we've been unable to do it. So she is in her element, singing songs with other people right now. And so she was busy on Monday evening, Valentine's Day. So her and some of our friends decided to get together last night for Valentine's Day at Vivace's here in Charlottesville, a really nice Italian restaurant. And I was unable to join them because I was busy in Waynesboro last night preparing to audition for an upcoming musical. And so I wasn't back in time for dinner. So I just went home and watched the Super Bowl last night. And then today, Kiki and I exchanged Valentine's Day gifts. I got her some earrings. She got me a Starbucks gift card. All of our Valentine's Day cards that we got each other all had dogs on them. So dogs are a heavy part of our lives right now, Rocket and Scherzer. And she got me some Reese's peanut butter eggs, which is not exactly a Valentine's Day thing, right? That's more of an Easter thing. However, as I discovered when I was shopping for her Valentine's Day gifts, they don't really make, or at least I wasn't able to find any Valentine's Day heart-shaped Reese's peanut butter cup things. So I just didn't get her any, and instead she got me the eggs. So she wins on that one. Nice job, Kiki, because those are going to taste really good for dessert tonight. No, instead of going to Vivace's, I was busy tap dancing and singing and dancing, and then I went home and watched the Super Bowl. I had my own private little solo Super Bowl party at my house last night. Watched the entire thing. And now I'm not really into football that much anymore. I don't watch football on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays or Saturdays or any days most of the year. Couldn't care less. But I am pretty sure I've seen every Super Bowl there has been since I started watching Super Bowls back in the early 1980s. The first one I ever remember watching was in 1982, the year the Redskins beat the Dolphins. I believe it was Super Bowl 17. And, even though I don't watch most NFL games like at all, I still love the Super Bowl, and this year's game was fantastic. The game itself was great. Back and forth, close game, not a lot of penalties slowing the game down, arguably one less penalty than there should have been. It was a fun game. I didn't really care at all who won, but I kind of thought it would be neat for the Bengals to get their first ever Super Bowl win, but it's been a while for the Rams as well, and why not? So I didn't really care who won. I wanted a good game, and I got it. The commercials were decent. The halftime show was surprisingly good. I was totally prepared to not really enjoy it because, I don't even know Snoop Dogg's songs, Dr. Dre's song. I couldn't tell you one of any. Well, I could tell you Gin and Juice is a Snoop Dogg song. Other than that, I don't know either of them. I don't know any Mary J. Blige songs. 50 Cent is the Shorty It's Your Birthday guy, right? I think. Eminem, certainly I've heard of his songs, and I just thought it was a great show. The music, it sounded great, even if half or all of them were lip syncing. I don't know. I'm pretty sure the band wasn't really playing. They might have been playing those instruments, but I don't think it's what we were actually hearing was them actually playing these instruments, but it sounded great. It was fun to watch. I enjoyed everything about the Super Bowl last night. As far as commercials go, the best commercial, in my opinion, the most memorable one, the one that sticks out that I've had several conversations with people about it today, was the Sopranos Chevy truck ad. It was awesome. The song is great. The opening sequence of The Sopranos, I have yet to meet its equal as far as kick-ass theme songs, opening montage. No matter how many times I would watch any episode of The Sopranos, I am never fast forwarding through that. You know how you get the skip intro button on some of the streaming services? No, I'm not skipping that intro. So when that came on and with Meadow at the wheel, heck yeah, I was all about it. And it was fantastic. And really, I'm just glad to know that Meadow and AJ are okay. You know, I mean, that's the real takeaway. Chevy truck, who cares? It could have been about anything as far as the ad goes. That Chevy truck being all electric, it's kind of cool. Electric vehicles making a big deal these days, especially trucks. But that one kind of looks like a Chevy Avalanche, which is by far Chevy's ugliest pickup truck I've ever seen. So the fact that it looks kind of like that is not great. But truck's cool. The Soprano kids are fine. And that was a great commercial. So watching the game, and apparently at some point during the game, some dude jumped out of the crowd and ran around on the field, got tackled by security, all of that. They didn't really show that on TV, and I haven't gone to watch any of the videos or anything of it. But it did bring back all of my memories of working for security or working the security job for the Redskins at FedEx Field back in 2002 and 2003. Now, I may not be much of a fan of the NFL, but the Redskins will always hold a special place in my heart, and which is saying something given how awful Dan Snyder is and how far down that organization has fallen in the last 20 or so years. I'd love to be able to root for the Commanders with the same enthusiasm I used to have for the Skins, but they will always be my team. I'm never going to jump ship and start rooting for some other team. It's just not in me. So, for today's three things, I'll be talking about my time as an employee of FedEx Field, and I will refer to the Redskins as the Redskins because that's what they were called back then. I'm totally down with the idea that that name is no longer okay. It was never really okay to begin with, but now that we all know it and they changed it, bravo to them for at least doing that. I can't say I love the new name, but, whatever. So, here's three things about working security at FedEx Field in the early 2000s. Back then, I actually thought I wanted to be a cop. I was wrong, but I thought I did. I even went as far as to take the entrance exam and to go do the physical agility tests that they do, and they made it clear that I am not cop material for multiple reasons. So I wasn't physically cut out for it, being big and overweight. And I don't really think I actually have the mindset of a cop. I think the cop job looks like something I think I would enjoy doing. Helping people, keeping the law, driving a cop car. I think I could get into that job, but I'm really not cut out for it. But at the time I thought I was, and I was looking for cop-like jobs to get some experience. So I could say I've worked as a security guard somewhere when I went to apply to be a police officer. And in my search, I found the job of security at FedEx Field, wherever, I forget where I was looking at the time, wherever you looked for jobs in 2002. But it was at FedEx Field where the Redskins play or played, and, well, whoever that team is now still plays there. But I called them up or emailed them or whatever, filled out a form, ended up driving up to FedEx Field up in Landover, Maryland, got an interview with HR. I met with Keith, who was the head of security for FedEx Field. He asked me a few more questions, and boom, I was hired right there and then. And so I signed all the papers and started showing up for Redskins games. So here's three things about working security at FedEx Field. Thing number one, getting people in. I would have to show up 4 hours before kickoff. When I got there, I would first go down into the depths of the stadium, get clocked in, get my uniform, which consisted of a black FedEx Field hat, which I got to keep, and a really nice black FedEx Field jacket, a lightweight one in the warmer weather and a heavy one for the winter. And then once you got all suited up, you would go out to the big meeting, which is like out in a section of seats out in the stadium, where we would find out our gate assignments. We'd be told of any like special circumstances for that particular game, such as like special ceremonies or post-game festivities. But mostly we were just sent out to our gate to get ready to open up to the public 2 hours before kickoff. So we We had time to spare. And during that time, it was fun to hang out outside the gate where we're not letting people in yet. We're just hanging out outside the gate or around the gates, listening to the live bands, playing music out there, mingling with the people, go smoke some cigarettes. And then once the gates opened, we'd get the crowds into the gates as fast as possible, while also making sure to not let any contraband into FedEx Field. Now, there wasn't much in the way of training for this job. I don't really remember any training happening. There was probably a list of things that I had to do for this job, but there was no real training. I didn't have to go up and spend a couple hours in training or anything like that. The biggest thing I remember was that we wanted to minimize or totally avoid, if possible, touching any of the guests. Even though we had to search their bags, their backpacks, their baby bags, under their hats, in their pockets, things like that. And we were looking for, weapons, umbrellas, outside food and drink, especially alcohol. And keep in mind, this was, pretty soon after 9/11. So security was heightened. Our job was a little bit tougher than maybe it was just a couple years before that. And lots and lots of people try to bring in alcohol to big old sports games, and we usually find most of it. So we usually ended up with a pile of unopened liquor, beer, wine, anything alcoholic that didn't make it into the stadium would get thrown away by the people. We had big trash cans right there, so you could toss away stuff that we didn't allow into the game. You could bring it back to your car, you could toss it, whatever. And, I didn't really drink at the time, so I didn't see this as a perk of the job, but most of my coworkers certainly did. Once most of the people were in, they would go through that trash can and pick out the best of the best unopened alcohol, make a stash for later, and, it would disappear with them at the end of the night. So I didn't really care, but all of my coworkers just loved that part of the job. And I do remember seeing large piles of alcohol, unopened bottles of alcohol, whiskey, all that stuff, beers, great. It was, if you're into that, it was great. I wasn't at the time. What I really hated, though, was having to tell people they couldn't bring in bottles of water, even if they were unopened. And we all knew the reason why. It was because they sell bottles of water inside FedEx Field for approximately $7 a bottle. This made people more mad than the ones who couldn't bring their alcohol in with them. I mean, those people get it. They knew they weren't supposed to bring their own alcohol in. The water people genuinely thought they could bring in unopened water, and boy, were they pissed when we made them either drink it or toss it or take it back to their car. Most would toss it, and weirdly, none of my coworkers saw that as a perk, all the unopened water bottles in the trash can. They didn't really care about that all that much. Now, we would look in their bags, and we would touch the outside of people's pockets, like with the backs of our hands. We would ask them to show us the inside of their pockets, but we didn't do anything more invasive than that. We weren't patting anybody down or feeling anybody up or anything like that. In fact, there was a whole separate level of security people right behind us, all that did all of that stuff. And you've seen them at any and every major sporting event, concerts, any large venue like that. This company, CSC Events, I'm pretty sure that's the name, they get hired to bring in their people to do all of that stuff, because those folks do not work for FedEx Field or the Redskins or the Commanders or the venue or anybody that wants to distance themselves from the liability that comes with touching people. Those folks did the pat downs of every, third or fifth person. It kind of depended on how long the lines were. So the point was, nobody with a FedEx Field or a Redskins logo on their jacket was doing the pat downs, which is where, they would really find the stuff that was well concealed from. They weren't just in pockets and purses. They were more concealed than that. Those pat down people would find them. And that's where people would get really upset, and they could get really upset with CSC, but not FedEx Field, because it was those people. They were the ones with the insurance policy that covered them for any liability that comes with touching people in a big crowd like that. So that was like the main part of the job, was getting people in safely without all of their horrible contraband. No weapons, no water, no liquor. We'll be right back to talk about things number 2 and 3.
Nothing I can say. Change your mind and stay. So I'll see you later today.
Welcome back. Thing number 2, reassignment. So the gates would begin to close around the stadium as the game would get going. And by halftime, all but just the main gates were closed, locked. You couldn't go in or out of them. And I wasn't usually at a main gate, so my gate would get closed. And we would, all of the guards that were at those security, at those gates that got closed, we would go down to the main office and gather with the rest of the security team to get reassigned somewhere else in the stadium. So, for example, you might get reassigned to guard the players' locker rooms or help the ushers in the crowd to make sure people aren't smoking in the stands or doing anything unruly. Or you might get sideline duty, and so you're down at field level where you're guarding, making sure that no nut job tries to run on the field. Or that job, but even better, called cheerleader duty. Yeah, cheerleader duty. Our boss, Keith, seemed to really like me because he assigned me to cheerleader duty every single game I worked. It is by far the best reassignment job you can get. So what I would have to do as cheerleader duty would be to go down to field level, out on the sidelines, and walk right past all of the Redskins at their bench, all the way down to the other end of the field to the 20 or 30-yard line. And my job was to stand there on the side of the field between the cheerleaders and the football field, facing the cheerleaders and, of course, the crowd beyond them. And my job was to watch for anybody in that crowd that might want to throw things or in any way cause harm to any of the cheerleaders. If anybody looked like they might want to jump the railing down to field level, I was to stop them. Nobody ever did. Never. Not once. Not while I was there. That's how good I was at my job. Also, this meant I got an up-close and personal cheerleader show, and I got to watch from behind the cheerleaders, which is by far my favorite view of cheerleaders. And if I wanted to, I could turn my head and get a peek at the game whenever I needed to, so I could watch the Redskins lose to whoever they were playing that week whenever I wanted to. It was up close, it was live, it was right there. I never got run over by any of the plays, but a couple of them came close, which was pretty cool. I was also really good at blocking the photographers from getting their shot because, as it seemed, I was always like standing right there between them and the action on the field, and they really hated that. But I was just standing where I was told to stand, and they did not like it one bit. All right, the game comes to an end, and all of us FedEx Field security guards, we form a V over by the tunnel so that all of the players and the coaches and the cheerleaders can get safely back into their respective locker rooms. Once we got all of the VIPs off the field into their locker rooms, the security team follows them in, and basically it was just a matter of waiting at that point right outside the cheerleaders' locker room until a small squad of the cheerleaders were ready to head on up to club level for the after-game party. The cheerleaders would come out of their locker room. They'd form up in 2 lines. We would form a wall of security around them. We would ride in the elevator up with them. Yeah, about 10 cheerleaders and about 10 security guards all in one pretty big, but still, it's just an elevator. That wasn't the worst part of the day, that's for sure. We looked imposing. We came out of the elevator, we formed a security line around the cheerleaders, and we walked them from the elevator all the way around to where they have like an after-game party on an outdoor patio with a live band and thousands of people, actually. And we were very effective at walking alongside the cheerleaders, looking imposing, and keeping all of the drunks on the club level from trying to touch the cheerleaders. Many people would come up and take pictures with the ladies, and even then, that was only allowed if the cheerleaders were okay with it. Otherwise, we kept everybody several feet away from the ladies. And this was definitely where I had to do the majority of the security guard work because plenty of people wanted to come up and probably like pinch their butts or touch their boobs or hug them or something like that. Who knows? These people were drunk after a long football game, which the Redskins probably lost, and they weren't happy, and so they saw cheerleaders, and it made them happy, but then they couldn't come touch them because we wouldn't let them. So we get through the club level, we get to the party, we escort the cheerleaders into the outdoor patio, onto the stage where they proceed to dance along with the band and really rev up the excitement considerably. Now, the band was great on their own, but the joint really got jumping when the Redskinettes showed up. And once again, our job was to keep the crowd away from the stage and away from the cheerleaders. That would last about a half an hour, and basically I was standing right there in front of the stage, once again looking imposing, looking like a wall that you should not try to get through, and we would keep the crowd away from the stage. Once the cheerleaders were finished hanging out with the band would keep playing, but the cheerleaders would leave. After about a half an hour or so, we would escort them back through the club level, back down the elevator, back to their locker room, and then cheerleader duty was over. The job wasn't over, but cheerleader duty has now come to an end. So we would head back up to the party on the club level and head back out to the outdoor patio where the band was rocking. And basically our job then was to keep order in the crowd while the band kept playing. And they put on a full show. It was usually about 90 minutes of live music, and they were great. It was the same band every time, at least for regular season games. Preseason games, they had another band that I don't even remember who they were. They weren't as good as the band that was the after-game party band on the club level for all of the regular season games. The band was called Love Seed Mama Jump. 4 words, Love Seed Mama Jump. And they put on a very lively, very fun, very rocking show. And it didn't matter if the Redskins won or lost. This was always a great show. And my job at that point was to mingle with the crowd, looking for anybody that might cause a problem. Are you too drunk? You're out of here. Are you fighting with other people? Yeah, see you later. Trying to rush the stage? Adios. There were plenty of people that were partying just a bit too hard after 6-7 hours at the stadium. And despite my job of having to escort drunk people out of the party, there was still plenty of opportunity to really get in and see what the band was doing. And I specifically remember one song that they did that I have loved ever since. It's by far my favorite version of a pretty classic song. It's my favorite song that they played, and it is a very up-tempo, fun, raucous version of Take Me Home Country Roads. Yes, that pleasant little John Denver song. These guys turned it into a really fast-paced rock and roll sing-along song. Sometimes they would even have a fiddle player show up with them who was really, really good. He would make the devil and Johnny jealous. After that, it was time to clear out the club level, walk the entire club level, almost the entire way around the stadium. The band is done, the game is long over, and we need to get everybody out of there. We need to make sure there isn't anybody left hiding in a corner, in a bathroom, under a table, behind a couch, anywhere. Everybody needs to go. Once that was done, you go return your jacket, you clock out, and you go home. And for me, that meant about a 3-hour drive if I could get out of Landover, Maryland without having to sit in all of the traffic from all of the people leaving the Redskins games. So it was quite a long day. I would drive up and back. Sometimes I would stay at my parents' place, but usually it was a up and back sort of a day for me. Quite a long day, but God, it was great. I loved that job. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I would get a check in the mail from them. Like, they paid me to do that job, and I would have paid them to do that job. That's how much I enjoyed that job. Like, if I could do that full time, I would. That's how much fun I had at large events, lots of people, kicking drunks out, guarding cheerleaders, watching football. It was just awesome. I really, really enjoyed that job. Thing number 3, extras. Now, I did this job for 2 seasons. I was there for Darrell Green's last game. Darrell Green, the itty-bitty guy, the fastest man ever in the NFL. That guy was a class act. I had actually met him years before, right after his rookie season. My family would go out to Redskins Park, their practice facility, and we would hang out after their practice, hoping to see some Redskins players. We saw Joe Theismann, John Riggins, Art Monk, Darryl Green. In fact, it was a rainy day that time that we were there. We got to hang out in this, like the bottom of a staircase inside like a little glassed-in area where he was like, I think, waiting for a ride. And he was waiting for a few minutes, and we were waiting to get out of the rain, and we just got to sit and chat with Darryl Green. My mom, my best friend Matt, and me just hung out with Darryl Green. Finally, we got his autograph. I think we got a picture with him. He would tell us about going to college in Texas and his mom and playing football. He just couldn't have been nicer. 20 years later, after finishing his last game, he walked around the entire football field there at FedEx Field, shaking the hands of any fans that stuck around after the game and came all the way down to the bottom of the stands right there, almost at field level. And there were thousands of people all the way around the stadium. And they were all there to say their goodbyes to Darryl Green. He then took a wireless microphone and gave a speech to the whole crowd, pretty much in tears. The crowd was in tears. I was in tears, and I was standing just a few feet away from Darryl Green as he finished his last game and said his goodbyes. And we escorted him to the locker room. It was it was the highlight of my 2 years at that job, for sure. The whole job was great, but that was a really touching minute for me. Another highlight came actually between my first and second seasons, or maybe it was after my second season. It was 2003. We got called in to do the same security job at a big concert at FedEx Field in the hottest part of the summer. It was July 2003, and it was the Summer Sanitarium Tour. Headliners were Metallica, but there was also Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, the Deftones, and Mudvayne. I was pretty stoked about Linkin Park. Kind of thought Limp Bizkit was fun. Didn't really know much about the Deftones or Mudvayne, but Metallica was what made me very excited to be there. Hell yeah. I got there way earlier than we were told to get there, but they had buses taking us over from the parking area. They let me get clocked in. I got my FedEx Field uniform, and I had time to kill before I had to meet up for the big security meeting. So what do? I go wander around backstage like I belonged there. I have the uniform. Nobody questioned me whatsoever. Nobody stopped me and said, whoa, you can't go there. I just walked around like I owned the place. I walked right on to the stage itself and stood right up there in the middle of the stage, right where James Hetfield would stand and sing. And if I had wanted to lose my job, I could have sat down right at Lars Ulrich's drum set. I mean, it was right there and nobody was sitting at it. I was totally prepared to steal a pair of Lars's drumsticks. If they happened to be sitting around the drumstick, I was pretty sure I could get a pair and get out of there without anybody noticing. But they were too smart for that. There were no drumsticks to be found anywhere. Clearly, they knew better. But I did score a Kirk Hammett guitar pick. I did not have to steal it, though. I just asked his guitar tech for one, and he gave me one. So how cool is that? I didn't really get to enjoy the actual show all that much. I was stuck up on the concourse level for the rest of the day, as far away from the stage as I could be. There was weird echoes. The sound is not great in there. And there was no cheerleader duty to get me any closer to the action. So getting the guitar pick and being on stage was the highlight of that day, and I loved it. Another perk for doing this job was that now I knew where the employees parked for Redskins games and how they got to the stadium. And I used that knowledge a year later when I actually got some tickets to a Redskins game. My wife and I went, drove on up, parked in the employee parking lot. We had hoodies that said they were actually satellite radio, Sirius. It was before Sirius merged with XM, so it was just Sirius satellite radio had just started having an NFL channel. And so I had two hoodies that both had Sirius NFL logos on them. So we looked like maybe we might actually have a job to do at the stadium. And Nobody questioned it. We just walked right on the bus as if we were employees. We got off the bus, and instead of going to clock in, we just walked up and around the stadium and hung out with people. We went to some tailgates. We watched some live music. There's food available out there, and it was great. We got to see the game. We sat in our seats, and we went after the game over to the club level where I was able to meet up with Keith, my former boss at the security job, who then led us into the club level party so we could go sing Country Roads with Love Seed Mama Jump. It was awesome. And I didn't have to kick out any drunk people at the time. And that was actually the last time I was at FedEx Field. It was a fun 2 seasons of work, but I'm pretty glad I stopped when I did. The Redskins were not in good shape then, and the team, the stadium, the whole organization has just been on a downward spiral for a long time now. I thought maybe finally changing their name to something less racist might help, but they even screwed that up. And the season after I stopped doing that job was Joe Gibbs' first season in his second run as coach. And it was almost a good enough reason for me to want to go back and continue working at that job just to be able to watch Joe Gibbs coach. But it turned out to not be all that great. He was not he did not have the success coaching the Redskins the second time around that he did the first time around. And it just wasn't, I was glad I wasn't there every Sunday. It was just a ton of driving. It was a ton of time away from my family. Didn't really work out good with the schedule at my regular job. And so 2 years of that, I had gotten my fill. By that time, I knew for sure I was never going to be a cop. So the only reason to keep doing it was because I was enjoying it so much. And that just wasn't a good enough reason. My job and my family, my main job and my family was more important than that. And so that was the end of my working at FedEx Field for Daniel Snyder. I kind of wish that I didn't have to say those words, but I did. I thoroughly enjoyed the job because I got to see up close and personal, how it works at a stadium on a day like that. One of my favorite things in life is to be involved in making a large event like that possible. If I'm on the stage performing, that'd be fantastic. If I'm in the crew behind the stage, if I'm just working security, heck, if I'm just selling hot dogs at a concession stand, I think I would enjoy it. When anything like that brings thousands of people together, I love being a part of making that happen and a part of the event itself. And I got to do that for 2 seasons of Redskins games in the early 2000s. And I will always miss that job. I do not want to go do it again right now with the Commanders in their current state. I hear things aren't well at FedEx Field. I hear the people aren't into it so much anymore, and nobody likes Daniel Snyder as an owner. There's scandals. The name sucks. I mean, just nothing is great about that team right now. I'll always be a Washington football team fan, and I don't think I'll ever just change into another fan of another team, but it's hard to get behind him right now. It would be hard to go back and do that job, even though the idea of the job sounds fun. What made me think of all this was watching the Super Bowl. That new field, that new SoFi Field or whatever that stadium is, that place just looks awesome. How much fun would it be to do that job there, where everybody's excited about football and for all of the right reasons? And congratulations to the LA Rams for their win in the Super Bowl yesterday. Happy St. Valentine's Day to all you lovers out there. It has been a pleasure to talk to you tonight. I'm going to leave you with, if you go on Spotify and search for Love Seed Mama Jump, you will find their #1 streamed song on Spotify is indeed a live version of their version of Take Me Home Country Roads. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. Instead of my band, here's some Love Seed Mama Jump. And I'll be back next week with 3 more things.
Oh, sugar, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Loud and older than the trees, younger than the mountains. mountains blowing like a breeze. Country roads take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Now country roads. All my memories gather round a misty making teardrops straight into the water. Dark and dusty, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like a breeze. Country road